Ladies and gentlemen, we're here in Galt, of all places, and many are going to say, Galt? What are you going to do a show in Galt for? Well, we're doing a show in Galt because it's the home of a very famous group of animals called the PAWS group, and alongside me is the original founder of PAWS, Pat Derby. And Pat, tell our folks, first of all, PAWS is an acronym. What does it stand for?
Performing Animal Welfare Society. And actually, when we formed PAWS, our concentration really was just on animals that performed in movies, television, circuses, other traveling shows.
Your background, of course, is in show business. You were in Hollywood for a good many years, and what did you do down there primarily?
I worked with animals in movies and television, and I worked there for about 8 or 9 years before I met Ed Stewart, who is the co-founder of PAWS and my partner for life.
And we're going to be hearing from Ed a little bit later on, but one of the people I can remember, the first time I met you, you had come up to a Rotary Club meeting in Murphy's, the Angels Murphy's Rotary Club, and you had with you somebody who was even more well-known than you were at that time. Who was that?
That was Amanda Blake, one of my dearest friends, and Amanda sort of encouraged Ed and me when we were talking about forming PAWS, and actually lived here with us the last 2 years of her life. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that a trip to Murphy's was the highlight of Amanda's day.
Great.
She would have been there every day if I would have taken her.
Paul, I hope you can pan around to your left and get a picture of Amanda. She's hanging on the wall here, back in her Gunsmoke days. And she was Kitty, of course, on Gunsmoke. And you and Amanda go back how far, Pat?
Actually, I met Amanda when I first started working animals in television, which was in the 60s. And Amanda was, of course, then filming Gunsmoke. And I worked a wolf on the show. And I'll never forget, I was told when I came on the set, they said, now look, you have to realize that if you work with Miss Kitty, don't you hurt that wolf. And I said, why would I ever hurt my wolf? So that was how I met Amanda, and we became close friends and dear friends for the rest of her life.
Well, she's a charming, or was a charming lady, and sadly died way too young of cancer, and she's missed by a lot of people, quite obviously, but by the same token, thank heaven for being part of the inspiration for you to found this organization called PAWS, or co-found it with Ed. And how did you literally get started?
Well, actually, I was working animals in movies and television. When I met Ed, I had written a book called The Lady and Her Tiger, and Ed and I did a book tour together. But The Lady and Her Tiger sort of was an expose, if you will, of just how unpleasant it is for animals to work in movies, television, circuses. A wild animal was not meant to be in captivity, and certainly not meant to be working on a film set or in a circus. And Ed and I both felt that we really didn't want to do that. So we bought a little resort in Northern California, and we had the animals that were left with us. We had them up there. But a young animal trainer read my book and drove all the way up there to tell us about some abuse of animals on a film set. And so we decided we needed to do something, and we formed PAWS. And we actually moved here to Galt only for a year. We thought we were going to fix the problem in 1 year.
I see.
And we were going to go back to the Redwood.
And you got here to Galt, and that was when?
It was back in 1984, actually around Christmas of '84.
Mm-hmm. And so the problem didn't have a quick fix, and as a matter of fact, not only is it not fixed, the reason why we're here filming today is because you're going to expand to Calaveras County.
Yes, and we're very excited about it.
And how many acres do you have up there?
We have 2,300 acres in San Andreas.
Uh-huh. And when did you acquire this property?
Actually, we started negotiating that property in 1998, and we bought it in '99. So we've had it about a year.
Well, and the publicity part of it came out, of course, when a friend of yours appeared on Do You Want to Be a Millionaire?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, actually, Ed and I really don't court celebrities. We're way too busy taking care of elephants. But in the course of our travels, we've met Kim Basinger and Alec Baldwin, and they've become good friends. They're both strong advocates for the animals. And Alec has always been sort of in the background. Kim has been more of a spokesperson for PAWS. But Alec has always sort of said to us privately, you know, you need a big piece of land, a big place, your dream. And so he was so excited when we got the property. And out of the blue, he called and said, guess what? I'm going to be on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I'm going to win a lot of money for your new property. So we were amazed. He won $250,000.
Now, what will that money primarily go for?
It's already allocated.
Okay.
It's the elephant lake. The elephants, the African elephants are going to have a huge lake, probably about 5 acres. It'll be 16 feet deep. They can swim. And also Manfred and Tuffy, the grizzly and the Kodiak bear, love to swim. And they're going to have a nice big lake, probably about an acre. So Alec's winnings are going for the 2 lakes.
Great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go out now and see some of the animals that will be coming up to Calaveras County. And, of course, we're going to see several of them who will be remaining here for different reasons. And Ed and Pat will tell us about those reasons as we visit the animals. You're going to hear some very, very heart-rending stories about some of these animals. You're going to hear some very bizarre stories about some of these animals. So stay tuned. We hope you enjoy the show. We'll be back with you a little bit later. Well, we'll try and be real quiet here, Pat, so that we don't wake this beautiful creature. Tell us what this is.
Well, this is Lucrezia. She's a Chinese leopard. They're extremely endangered in the wild. But again, in captivity, overbred. Lucrezia and I first met back in 1973. I worked with her on a movie, and at the end of the movie, they were just going to send her out to be somebody's pet or be in a roadside zoo. So I took her. She was 2 months old. She is now 28 years old, and she is the oldest living leopard in captivity that we know of. 28 is quite old for a leopard, and she's in fairly good health. We do regular blood checks on her. Her kidneys are pretty good. Her blood values are good. And she's just like an old person. She loves lying in the sun, and she sleeps a lot, but she's eating well. We have her on a special diet, and she has a heater up in the roof there, so when the nights get a little chilly, it's nice and warm. And she's basically sort of living out her years here. Obviously, she would not go to Calaveras.
Right. Now, is it safe to assume that she was the one you started with here at PAWS, or at least one of the early inhabitants?
Actually, Lucrezia, I got before we ever thought of forming PAWS. I worked animals in movies and television, and I would rescue animals then when I could and could afford it. And she was one that I was able to rescue when she was a cub. And unlike most of the people who work animals in movies and television, I just never felt that I could send her off. So she's been with me forever.
There's another one in a cage right behind her. Is this a same species?
This is Spike, and he's an African leopard. And if you notice, he's up high. Leopards don't like to go straight out. They love to go straight up. Spike is fairly young, and he was in a breeding compound with one of the tigers, and the owner actually went bankrupt, and there were a lot of animals there. We were able to take a few, and we placed animals in other places. But it's really horrible when these breeding facilities go under. There really aren't a lot of options for these animals.
Spike obviously spends most of his day right up there.
He that weighs as much as they do in their mouth. He's a lovely guy, and probably he and our black leopard would be a couple of animals that would go up to Calaveras probably in phase 2.
Great, great. Where do we go now? All right, now, folks, a bobcat, familiar to many of you up in the Calaveras County area, because we have bobcats up there. And Pat, tell us where you got this animal.
Robert is a confiscated bobcat, and he was actually brought to us by the California Department of Fish and Game. It's illegal to have these animals as pets in California, and he was confiscated. Some people had brought him in from Montana. He's quite a large bobcat. The bobcats in California are rather smaller. Actually, indigenous animals most of the time who come to us are normally ones that are confiscated by state officials.
Okay, at least we finally found an animal that wasn't a part of a drug ring. Black leopard we're looking at now, who is stretching himself, Ed. Black leopards are not indigenous to California. Is this one from the Florida area?
This one is, well, this is an Asiatic animal.
Oh, okay.
But he's from Houston, chained out in somebody's backyard in Houston. And we named him after actually the owners of the Houston basketball team, the Rockets.
His name is Rocket.
His name is Alexander, after Leslie and Nancy Alexander.
All right, now seriously, aren't there animals in Florida that are members of the panther family that are black?
Well, some people say they've spotted black mountain lions or black, in the southern United States, maybe it's sometime jaguars. But a black animal like this is either a black leopard or a black jaguar. And you can tell by the smaller head, this guy has a smaller head, so he's a leopard. And it's a little different spot. I'm not sure you'll be able to pick it up, but he actually has spots that show in the sunshine. But the leopards have spots and the jaguars have rosettes. And the jaguars are land animals, and leopards live mainly in the trees. So and he's a nice guy. He was just picked up by the police department. Somebody had him illegally, and I'll tell you, it happens all the time. By the time we took him and we tried to find a home for him in a zoo, because people, they would think, my God, this is a beautiful animal, a black leopard, very valuable. No zoo in the United States wanted him. So that's why we took him. And right after he came here, there was another black leopard in the same situation in Houston. So what we have to do is stop the problem, stop people from breeding them and selling them as pets, and victimizing people and animals through their sales.
In essence, then, is what I'm trying to say, putting you folks out of business.
Well, that's what I see. We've always said from the very beginning, we're the only business where we'd like to put ourselves out of business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's a time where we don't have animals that need a home like this, I'll be the happiest person in the world. Of course, the elephants are outgonna me probably. But animals like this, there's a chance if we straighten up and we pay attention and we do the right thing, we won't be breeding so many in captivity. Nobody in the history of the world has ever released a leopard into the wild, a captive-born leopard. They've never done it with a mountain lion. They've never released a bobcat. They've never released a captive-born bear. I mean, all the breeding in captivity, the animals live and die in captivity. They're not used to replenish populations in the wild.
Well, that brings up something that I think it wouldn't be hurt to touch on right now, and that is, I know there are going to be people watching this show who are going to be saying to themselves, if not to somebody else, why on earth don't these folks just let these animals go, put them back out in the wild and so on? Why don't you, Ed?
Well, I'll tell you, if we could release anything, it would already be gone. He wouldn't know what to do in the wild. Animals that aren't raised by their mothers and by a group in the wild have no idea how to survive. But that's not even the problem. If you had one, if you had Calaveras is a good area to bring this one up, a mountain lion. If there was a healthy mountain lion to be released, somebody point out an area that needs mountain lions right now. Same thing in India with elephants. If you had a baby elephant that could be released, there's so many elephants in small areas in India and all in Asia and in Africa that it can't support anymore. The real problem is not the numbers of animals, but the space that their habitat takes up. And we've pretty much taken away their habitat, and they're filling up the areas that are able to be filled.
This black puma leopard, is trying to munch on one of Paul's toes down there. I don't think Paul was aware of it at first. This is truly a magnificent animal, Ed.
He's a great guy.
And how long have you had him?
We've had him just about 2 years. He came in 2 years ago, a real emergency. There are so many animals that are kind of in a holding pattern with nowhere to go, and a lot of times, you know, he would have been euthanized if nobody took him.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes might be an option, but we don't ever do it here.
And excuse me, you may have said this and I missed it. Will this be one of the animals that will eventually be going up to Calaveras County?
He might be in phase 2. Leopards might go in phase 2, but it's actually easier. Lions, tigers, bears, and elephants are actually easier than leopards. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as far as containment. So, you know, we're going to go slowly, and you know, the good thing is that the property is there, and it's something that we've always looked for, is a place to move from here. We have 30 acres here. The enclosures here are probably bigger than many zoos, but still, when you're satisfied with the area a captive animal has, then something's wrong. You know, you should always want to make it bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, from this magnificent animal, I think we're going to wind up the show today with a not so necessarily magnificent looking animal. Now I'm saying that as the eye of a beholder. And obviously, Pat is not agreeing with that at all.
Well,
we're going to go talk to a baboon and
a little long-tailed macaque.
And a long-tailed macaque. And now the macaques are cute. The baboons, you know, it depends on how many Western shows. I mean, animal shows you've seen and what phase you've seen them in. We have a white-lipped tamarin here, and I didn't mean to infer that she was not attractive. Pat, where did you get her?
Actually, Bee was in a pet store that went bankrupt, and they had a lot of animals, including a gorilla. Ed was so grateful that we got the tamarin and not the gorilla. But these little animals live in the rainforest in South America. They have a wonderful call, and they're lovely little animals, but their populations have been decimated by pet traffic. So many people buy them that during the 60s and the 70s, they were popular pets, and it almost wiped them out. They're now quite endangered, and it's a good thing.
All right, what are we looking at here, Ed?
Well, this is Ferguson. He's actually named after our neighbors across the street, and you find out whether the neighbors are happy or upset about having a monkey named after him. But the Fergusons are great neighbors, and they love the fact that Ferguson is named after them. Somebody actually dropped him off one day in a pouring rainstorm, and in Ferguson's driveway.
Really?
And called and said, there's a monkey in a cage out in the rain, and you better go get it. So we went and got it, and poor little guy seemed like he was about a year old, and he had been bought through the illegal pet trade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredibly convoluted story, but the woman said that she had paid $6,000 for this monkey, and it's terrible. She just sentenced him to a life in captivity, and also, threatened his life, actually leaving him out in the rain like that. So we took him to the vet, checked him out, and he turned out to be a nice guy. He's very playful, and he's in with an older baboon, Harriet the baboon, which I guess you'll see in a minute.
That's going to be our final shot. Now, are these two actually living together now?
They are living together now. Is that door open, Pat? That door's not open, is it? Well, he closes it.
Who does?
There we go. Ferguson closes
Ferguson closes it. All right. Well, see there, he said, look, this is my show, and I'm going to run it alone. Yeah. And tell me about Harriet, because in all the years that I've watched wild animal pictures and so on, I've never thought that baboons were particularly attractive. Now, obviously, you think Harriet is beautiful.
Harriet is. She's a lovely, lovely senior citizen now. But baboons are probably one of the most wonderful of all the primate families. They're extremely intelligent, very social. They live in large groups. They love each other. They're very protective of their young. We could learn a lot from baboon society. And what is so very, very sad, in captivity, when baboons are bred in a zoo or some other facility, normally if they have too many baboons in the group, they will pull the babies off the mothers, and that's what happened to Harriet. She was taken from her mother when she was less than 2 months old and put in a little petting zoo. So Harriet lived alone for such a long time during her formative years that she's always sort of been a single baboon, and people have had to be her troop. And she is one of the most congenial, lovely, sweet, social baboons that you will ever meet. Not at all ferocious. She loves little children. She used to play with Ed's nieces and nephews. She's extremely tolerant, as you can see. She's very tolerant of everything. And in her declining years, little Ferguson has come to spread joy in her life.
And Ferguson's not too dumb himself. He can obviously manipulate that door very well.
Ferguson is he is the quintessential clown. And Harriet is always very happy when we put him to bed at night. It's sort of like, I love to have him visit, but I don't want him living with me.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to conclude this show by a little wrap-up with Pat and telling us a little bit more about the Calaveras County property. Now that you've seen some of the animals, many of the animals that will be moving up there, get some idea of what you can look for up there, and so we'll be back with you in just a moment. Talk a little bit now, Pat, about some of the basic things up there. Our viewers have now had an opportunity to see, for example, the very relatively small enclosures that you've got here for the bears and the elephants and so on. I'm trying to visualize putting an elephant fence around 200 acres, for heaven's sake. What's that going to entail, and who are we going to get to do that job?
Actually, Ed's trying to visualize that too. No, actually, Ed has traveled all over the world and looked at containment for elephants in Africa, where they're out in huge areas, in some of the parks, and also in India. And we have, as a consultant, one of the top zoo designers in the world has already flown here. He's been out to Calaveras. So we will have state-of-the-art containment. And we're using local contractors, of course, in Calaveras to complete the designs. But this will be one of a kind. It is unique and different in the world. But I need to tell you that safety is Ed's middle name. In 25 years of having animals and building enclosures, we've never had any animal escape. We've never had a staff person seriously injured. We've, knock wood, never had an accident, and that's because Ed is so cautious and so careful.
Well, I think that's